2023. First order of business will be a roll call, and let's start down at the left with David. And when we get to the two new characters on the right, introduce yourself and tell us a tiny bit about yourself, please. So go ahead, David.
David Foley here.
Vance Garwood. Gary Israel.
Rick Peterson.
Marla Canfield.
Clint Tynert.
Peter Fox.
Well, welcome, gentlemen. Glad to have you as a part of this.
Thank you.
Well, the next item is the minutes from the September 19th, 2023 meeting. Vance, thank you for chairing in my absence. So if there's any discussion, now's the time. Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I, Vance Garwood, make a motion that we approve the minutes of the September 19th, 2023 meeting of the Andover Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals.
Dave
I
Foley,
give-
second.
Go ahead, David.
Sorry, Dave Foley, second.
Gary's feeling under the weather. We weren't sure he was going to step up and be that second that he's always good at. Thank you, guys. We have a first and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carried. All right, item number 4, communications, committee and staff report. Les, Justin?
No news is good news. We've reported to you the last several months that building activity is considerably higher than it was last year. Our residential permit numbers are nearly double what they were last year and higher than even pre-pandemic numbers.
Wow, that's really good news. All right. Well, thanks. Appreciate that. Let's go to agenda item 5.1, the final PUD of the Prairie Point at Cornerstone, 3rd edition. Is that you, Justin?
It is.
You got it.
All right. So this subject property is located within parcel 7 of the Cornerstone preliminary PUD plan, generally located directly south of the Prairie Point at Cornerstone 2nd edition and just west of 159th Street East. Thank you, Les. The applicant is proposing 17 lots on property zoned R4, which is the equivalent of the MXR zoning district, R4 being the original zoning district that it was when the preliminary PUD was created. That R4 zoning district is intended for higher density multi-family residential development near business districts. Block A is numbered lots 1 through 4, Block B lots 1 through 13. The preliminary PUD plan was last amended in May of 2023. These 17 lots will receive access from 159th Street East to just to the west there, and Cobblestone Street to the north. That's that street that comes down right down the center there. The majority of staff comments that we had back at the subdivision committee meeting last week were engineering based. The applicant has been a pleasure to work with. They responded to all of our outstanding staff comments, and we did confirm with our engineer that any outstanding engineering comments that we had were addressed. So no concerns from a planning and zoning or engineering standpoint on these comments. The subdivision committee, like I said, had a crack at it last week, and we didn't have any major concerns. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is in attendance as well.
Anybody have questions for Justin or subdivision committee? Anything to add?
Well, Marla, Gary, and I visited saw last week at the subdivision, like we said. So, yeah, I don't have
Sounds good.
anything.
Applicant, Ken, if you're here, please.
Good evening. I'm Will Clevenger with Garver. I'm here with Greg Gear tonight. And Greg, did you have anything to add? I don't think there's anything to add other than we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have anything for them?
I think we asked all the questions in subdivision.
Well, good. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it very much. Any further discussion? And if not, we'll look for a motion to approve with modifications, or disapprove this particular agenda item?
I, Vance Garwood, recommend that the Planning Commission approve the Prairie Point at Cornerstone Third Edition Final Plan Unit Development Plan.
Thank you, Vance. Do we have a second?
I, Gary Israel, second the motion.
Thank you, Gary. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
See you.
Sorry we didn't have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll proceed to agenda item 5.2, which is the small tract final plat for the Wesley ER. You again? You got it.
So this property is located at 221 West Highway, US 54. It's appropriately named the Wesley Andover replat because this is the property where they will be building an emergency room, a 24-hour emergency room. So that case went through zoning not that long ago. So I'm sure all of you are fairly familiar with this piece of property. The final plat this evening has been submitted as a small tract final plat. So you may notice the name difference, but per the Unified Development Manual, the applicant can submit a small tract final plat without submitting a preliminary as long as the subdivision meets the appropriate criteria, including less than 10 acres in size, creates no more than 5 lots, and no public street or access easement through the lot. So that's why it's considered a small tract as opposed to just a standard. The purpose of this particular replat is to relocate the existing 20-foot sewer easement that currently bisects the subject property to allow for development on the site. The way it's currently platted, that 20-foot utility easement cuts directly through the center of the property right around here. And this replat moves it around to allow for development at the center of this site. The proposed plat, it's one lot, roughly 1.8 acres. There are 2 access points on the property, one along Cloud Avenue and the other along Riverview Street. The property, as I mentioned before, B5 Highway Corridor Mixed Use Business District, which allows for medical buildings here. Originally, the property was zoned 2 different things, and we brought it all under the B5 banner. We had some general cleanup comments regarding access control on the north end of the property, but generally those were all taken care of. We discussed that in length at the subdivision committee. Our engineer reviewed this, had some comments, but all of those engineering comments have been addressed. I confirmed with Josh Golka at PEC about that today. So no outstanding comments from staff. Everything was cleaned up nicely by the applicant. So we have no concerns. But any questions, if you have any, I'm happy to answer. And the applicant's in attendance as well.
Yeah, Justin,
Yeah.
with the change in the sewer, does that go under the pavement then?
Yeah, it'll be,
If you scroll down a few sheets,
might be able to show you that, Gary. Let's see. Is it the site?
C 1.2, C 1.0.
Oh, here's 1.0 on the screen there.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see the new location of that sewer easement, this dashed line that skirts around the north side of the building.
You want to point it or no?
Uh-huh.
So you're showing.
This dashed line is the new route for the sewer as opposed to its current location that's down here, something like this, that would cut right through the center of the building. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, combining a couple lots previously platted and cleaning up that sewer location are the primary purpose of this plat.
Thank you.
Wasn't that long ago we saw this one, I don't believe. This
No, it wasn't.
turned around pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like Justin said, we saw this one in subdivision last week again, also.
Good.
Talked
Good,
about it
thank
at
you.
length.
If there's no other questions, are you Tracy? Please, if there's
Tracy Young with Garber Surveying, and I agree with the comments from Justin. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anything for her? Well, wish we had at least one to make the walk up there justified, but not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah. that's right.
Sorry. Do we need a question then?
I think we asked our questions last Tuesday.
All right. Thank you, Tracy.
Just so we make it easy for you? Did we make the whole process easy?
Good. Okay.
Sounds good.
Always
All
good to
right.
hear.
Well, as with the last one, I'll look for a motion to approve with modifications, or disapprove the Wesley ER small tract final plat.
I, Vance Garwood, recommend that the planning commission approve the Wesley ER small tract final plat.
Thank you, Vance. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Marla. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes. Thank you. All right. It's the night for small tract plats, isn't it, Justin?
It is.
Agenda item 5.3, small tract final plat, the Blackwell Edition.
This is also a small tract final plat. This property is located at 1501 South Andover Road, northwest of South Andover Road and West Harry Street. The proposed final plat creates one lot. It's less than an acre. It's 0.8 acres. That property on the screen and on your pages is this little one right here. The property receives access from South Andover Road by way of a 40-foot opening. And the property is zoned MXR, which is a multiple family mixed residential district, which again is a zoning district intended for higher density multifamily development adjacent to arterial collector streets. We did provide comments to the applicant, same applicant this evening, I might add. And again, we had a few outstanding comments. None of it really had to do with lines that much. It was mostly zoning data that was on there. We just needed to make a couple corrections to the zoning data and make a couple corrections to the signature blocks, but really no significant changes were required at subdivision. We looked through it pretty thoroughly. The city engineer reviewed everything just to make sure that it all works out, and it does. So no concerns again from planning and zoning, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. And thanks for subdivision for all the work you guys do going through these.
Sure. Yeah, we did discuss all three of these in depth last week. It was a good discussion.
Good. Thank you. Any questions for Justin on this?
No?
And Tracy, if there's anything to add, you can, and otherwise you're welcome to stay seated. All right.
Just that 40-foot opening is existing. It's not new. Just so everybody on the
Right.
committee knows, something
Yeah.
we asked about last week. So it's not a new opening. It's existing already.
All right. Well, I will look for a motion again to approve with modifications, or disapprove the Blackwell Edition small tract final plat.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, recommend that the Planning Commission approve the Blackwell Edition small tract final plat.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second?
Second by Vance Garwood.
Thanks, Vance. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion to recess the Planning Commission and convene the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you, Gary. I, Eric Peterson, will second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now convene the Board of Zoning Appeals with variance 736 North Deerfield Circle. I now call agenda item 5.4, which is a public hearing on case number BZA-V23-0011. We would like to welcome everyone interested in this hearing and lay out a few ground rules. It is important that you present any facts or views that you have as evidence at this hearing so that findings can be made for the decision of this board. In order to grant a variance, 5 specific written findings of fact must all be met according to the state statutes and the city zoning regulations. This board is authorized by state statutes to make a decision appealable only to district court and not to the governing body. After our zoning administrator provides us with some information, I will call upon the applicant and then we will hear from other interested parties. Once all have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. The board will close the hearing to further public comments and will then consider their decision, during which time they may direct questions to the applicant, the public, or staff. You should be aware that the board can require such conditions to be attached to the premises benefited, benefited by the variance as may be necessary to comply with the standards set out in Article 11.106. These are to reduce any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these regulations. Failure to comply with any of the conditions attached to a zoning permit for a variance shall constitute a violation of the regulations. You should also be fully aware that if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded for inclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
No.
Hearing none, we'll move to notification. Official notice for this hearing was published on the City of Andover municipal website on September 27th, 2023, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 6 real property owners of record in the area of notification on September 27th, 2023. The record shows that at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there is evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare that proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the board if any of them have received any ex parte verbal or written communications prior to this hearing, which they would like to share.
None.
Hearing none, I will now call on the city's zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
Mr. Chairperson, I'll step in for Les as the temporary zoning administrator. Just on this one though. So this property, obviously 736 North Deerfield Circle, the property has a zoning district of SF2, which is a medium density single family zoning district. Per our regulations, the SF2 zoning district does allow accessory structures, but they're capped at 300 square feet. So kind of small. This particular property owner wants to construct an accessory structure larger than that. Theirs is 400 square feet. Thank you, Les. So basically they need a variance of 100 feet to cover the difference. We've reviewed this pretty standard variance request with no concerns from staff as noted in the variance report. I'm available for any questions.
Well, it appears it's going to be done at a really high level in terms of blending in and looking like it belongs and all of that.
Yes, it is very nice when the applicants provide 3D renderings, which those are included in your packet. You're right, Eric. It looks very nice.
And there's a hedgerow right behind their property, correct?
I believe
Will
so,
that
yes.
hedgerow ever disappear? You know, that if any building goes on the other side of the hedgerow?
Gary, you know, those hedgerows are typically on the property line. And in this case, there is some language in the planned unit development about only allowing the hedgerow to be removed for utilities and roadways. So we would assume in the future, we would have a similar condition on the other side of the hedgerow on what's now ag land.
Yeah. Yeah, because the street actually dead ends if you leave theirs or head whatever direction. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right.
Was there any issues with the neighbors?
Good question. We have not heard from them. Typically, if there's an issue or something like that, it would be a phone call or, even if it's somebody seeking information.
Mhm.
Oh, I got this letter. What does it say? We would let you know that it was an informative discussion, but no calls or concerns on this one.
Yeah, good
Sometimes,
question.
sometimes they do show up. Last meeting before, we had a neighbor that was curious about a property that was going to be changing on Andover Road and how it was going to affect them. So it's not uncommon, just so the new members know, for a neighbor to be here.
Yeah, and it is nice as staff too, getting like general inquiry type questions. It's good to know that our notifications are actually reaching people.
Yep. Good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. All right. Well, I am assuming there's no applicant and no public, so we'll bypass that step. Hearing no further public comments, I'll hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions to clarify information. Just to clarify, Justin, for the record, you were saying that there wasn't any written communications.
No,
right?
sir.
Thank you. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of the required findings of fact. The board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation.
I can do those.
You got it? Thank you.
Does the evidence demonstrate that, one, the physical surroundings, shape, or topography of the property would result in a practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience for the owner, lessee, or occupant, staff? Subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for zoning district and provides adequate space while allowing adequate separation from nearby residences.
Concur.
Two, granting the variance will result in material detriment or injury to other property or improvements in the neighborhood. Staff, no detriment and/or injury to other property or improvements is anticipated.
Concur.
Three, granting the variance will result in an inadequate supply of light or air to adjacent property, substantially increased traffic congestion, increased fire risk, or substantially diminished property values in the neighborhood. Staff, the subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space while allowing adequate separation from nearby residences. No adverse effects are anticipated.
Concur.
Concur.
Four, the request for a variance is not based exclusively on a desire of the owner, lessee, occupant, or applicant to make more money out of the property. Staff, the applicant has declared the intended use to be an accessory outdoor living structure.
Concur.
Concur.
Specific conditions to be met. One, the requested variance arises from a condition unique to the property in question, which is not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and which was not created by any action of the property owner or the applicant. Staff, the subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district and provides adequate space while allowing adequate separation from nearby residences.
Concur.
Two, strict application of the provisions of these zoning regulations would result in unnecessary hardship for the owner, lessee, or occupant of the land or structures. Staff, the intent of accessory structure limitations is to assure that the size of the accessory structures does not overwhelm the single-family look and feel of the neighborhood. The subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space and separation from nearby residences, while below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur.
Three, granting the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. Staff, the intent of accessory structure limitations is to assure that the size of accessory structures does not overwhelm the single-family look and feel of the neighborhood. A subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space and separation from nearby residences, while below the zoning district maximum's allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur.
Four, the requested variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. Staff, the intent of accessory structure limitations is to assure that the size of the accessory structures does not overwhelm the single-family look and feel of the neighborhood. The subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space and separation from nearby residences, while below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur.
Five, the requested variance will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of these zoning regulations. Staff, the intent of accessory structure limitations is to assure that the size of the accessory structures does not overwhelm the single-family look and feel of the neighborhood. The subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space and separation from nearby residences, while below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you, Vance.
Mr. Chairperson?
Yes,
I'd just
sir.
like to add that it was very nice of the applicant to provide drawings for us to see what it was going to look like, because it's going to be, if there was ever anybody building behind them, that structure is going to look like their home. It's just not something that they just stuck out there. So
Yeah. No,
really appreciate them doing that.
well said, and I'm glad you put that in the record. That's a great point. Okay, Vance, thank you for reading that, and therefore, we're at the motions.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, please, Marla.
Do we know where on the property the structure is going to be?
The map looks like it's right behind.
Yeah, it's right behind the house.
Oh,
Yes, I'm not.
It's the first
yeah,
colored
This one?
drawing that you have. Yeah.
you got it. Right there you go.
Okay.
So this is
We've
the
previously
existing house.
had questions, didn't we, on a different, like pool house type situation, have questions of like where it was sitting compared to the neighbors, and the neighbors were a little concerned about like runoff at one point or it being too close? I just want to make sure
Yes, we did.
everything, no, there's no concerns there.
This is a large lot
Okay.
with a lot of depth. So the 25 feet dimension that's shown there to the rear property line is actually the required minimum setback for a house.
Okay.
And in this case, as far as drainage goes, it backs up to a hedgerow, and there's typically a drainage swale built in the backyard that carries runoff from house to house to house to some sort of a drainage structure at some point.
And there are even two drains to the, I guess would be the south side of the new
Yeah.
structure right there by the well. It says three
Oh, yeah,
area
you're right.
drains right there.
Sure.
So I would think if the neighbors had a big problem with it, they'd be here.
Yeah, and my directions aren't, I can't figure it out, but
think
if
that's
you
south,
look
right?
lower right of the cabana, they've actually put language in about regrade to improve drainage too, so. It's certainly top of their mind, it appears.
Yeah, I think it's a good question from Marla, and
Yeah, good question, Marla.
our engineer did look at it as well. So we do have him look at variances, especially on stuff like this, and he was not concerned, which is good.
Yeah, with the orientation of that building, if there's a heavy rain, they're going to get rain coming up to the north and south of that building. And on the south, there's only 10 feet. There's a 10-foot setback from the property line. And as Les mentioned, there's typically a swell cut in there for drainage. So I think they've addressed it pretty well.
Good question, though. Is there a motion to either approve, modify and approve, disapprove, or to table the discussion?
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, having considered the evidence at the hearing and determined that the findings of fact have been found to exist that support all 5 conditions set out in subsection 11-106 B.B2 of the zoning regulations in KSA 12-75E, I move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting the variance for case number BZA-V23-0011 as requested.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second to that?
Second by Vance Garwood.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. A resolution will be prepared and made available to the applicant as soon as reasonably possible, but no later than 45 days from the date of this hearing. If anyone is aggrieved by this decision, a further appeal can be made to the district court to determine its reasonableness within 30 days after the resolution is signed and filed with the zoning administrator. All right. I now call, pardon me, I now call agenda item 5.5, which is a public hearing on case number BZA-V23-0012. We would like to welcome everyone interested in the hearing and lay out a few ground rules. It is important that you present any facts or views that you have as evidence at this hearing so that findings can be made for the decision of this board. In order to grant a variance, 5 specific written findings of fact must all be met according to the state statutes and the city zoning regulations. This board is authorized by state statutes to make a decision appealable only to district court and not to the governing body. After our zoning administrator provides us with some information, I will call upon the applicant and then we will hear from other interested parties. Once all have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. The board will close the hearing to further public comments and will then consider their decision, during which time they may direct questions to the applicant, the public, or staff. You should be aware that the board can require such conditions to be attached to the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to comply with the standards set out in Article 11.106. These are to reduce any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these regulations. Failure to comply with any of the conditions attached to a zoning permit for a variance shall constitute a violation of the regulations. You should also be fully aware that if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded for inclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
None.
Hearing none, we'll move to notification. Official notice for this hearing was published on the City of Andover municipal website on September 27th, 2023, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 14 real property owners of record in the area of notification on September 27th, 2023. The record shows that at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there is evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare that proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the board if any of them have received any ex parte verbal or written communications prior to this hearing, which they would like to share.
None.
Hearing none, I'll call upon the city's zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
Mr. Chairman, Board of Zoning Appeals, this case is very similar to the previous case in that it's an application for a variance of the maximum size of an accessory structure in that R2 single-family residential district. In this case, the proposed use of the structure is for storage. It's on a rather large lot in the Prairie Creek subdivision on a corner. Unusual shape you can see in the aerial exhibits.
Right.
Do we know any of the stuff that was like on the previous drawings regarding, location on the lot, materials, is it going to look okay, or are there, you know what I'm trying to ask?
The applicant did provide an exhibit. It's kind of, it should be in your packet.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry if I
also-
missed it.
No, that's okay. I will also put it up on the screen. We were having an Adobe Acrobat issue. So Trey, I don't know if you see that in the folder, but there's a separate page for that. I think we should be able to pull it up on the screen here momentarily. There we go. A little crooked, but basically, like Les was saying, you could see that awkward shape of the lot, and there is the structure. There you go, Eric, right there. So yeah, as it relates to the primary structure, that is where the proposed location is I believe it's 6 feet from the fence line.
I pulled it up on my phone. It looks, it's too tight to have any kind of a drive back there, isn't it? Or maybe right on the edge on the north. I don't know.
It's close. I drove by just
Did
because I
you?
wasn't familiar, and I sometimes wanted to, and there were people back there working, so there's some kind of digging going on. But it may not have anything to do with this. Yeah, it may have been
Of course
something
not,
totally
never.
different. Absolutely, far be it. But it was close in terms of could you access it or not.
Okay. Well, it just looked pretty tight to be able to drive from the front around to the back. So I just was curious. It
What neighbor is this?
hardly, but Prairie Creek.
Okay, Prairie Creek. So I'm sure they have an HOA that's somewhat overpowering and keeps
Pretty
it
tight, but
Yeah. Do
For
we know
materials.
how tall the structure's gonna be, what the construction material is gonna be?
I don't believe we do in this case.
right
We were
here,
given a plan view only.
Prairie Creek going north on 13th Street.
And is the 5 to
The one right
6
in the
feet
corner there.
setback
It is
from
pretty
the
deeper
fence
lot.
line sufficient? That
Yes, as long as there is a fence, a solid fence.
That's where the tornado hit, wasn't it?
Not far. Yeah.
So
Off right
in,
here
in
somewhere maybe.
maybe a question for you guys. In times where there is not anything like answering these questions, do we trust the HOA has things in place that are going to protect the visuals of how this is going to look, or what?
And the maximums for the zoning
Right.
district would apply as far as the height of the building. It could be no higher than the 35 feet that's allowed for a house in the neighborhood.
Yeah, when we receive an application for a variance, we're looking for obviously the application, but also a list of people to notify, a plot plan, which is what's depicted on your screen now. There's typically not an aesthetic component that is done on residential properties. All commercial and multifamily properties are reviewed by the site plan review committee, but this is exempt because it's just a residential storage structure. It's awesome when they send the 3D renderings because it's, you can
Yeah.
look at it and
Or somebody here that we can ask the questions.
there you
of.
go.
Yeah,
And one of the two is generally pretty nice.
right.
But in this particular case, they weren't necessarily required to send us anything, but it does check out from a location and size standpoint. And obviously when they apply for a building permit, we will look at that and make sure that it all matches from a zoning standpoint at least.
Okay. Okay.
I'd like to think that they talked to their neighbors at 1719 about it. Obviously, they got a letter in the mail, so they could be here or could have submitted written questions or concerns if they had any.
So you didn't have any written anythings?
No.
I don't think written anythings is the appropriate technical
No
term.
written
It's
anythings.
mine. Okay. All right. Any other questions along
It
this one?
seems
Peter?
the house on the plat is different than the aerial view of the house on the property. Looks like there's more room than there really is.
Yeah, I know that our GIS data, which we pull that aerial image from, is from Butler County. I don't know, the latest, aerial map that they chose from what year or whatever, but there's a chance that there was work done on the home or something like that that isn't reflected on that aerial.
Looking at that aerial, it seems pretty accurate. Some of what you may be seeing is the shadow from the sun angle and the angle that the aerial photo was taken from. And just to kind of put things in perspective, I never like to think of those aerial photos being any closer than 1 meter accuracy. That's their claim. So if they're within 3 or 4 feet, they're within their tolerances.
Very good.
All right. Well, then, hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of the required findings of fact. The board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation. You want that one?
I can do it again.
All right.
Does the evidence demonstrate that, one, the physical surroundings, shape, or topography of the property would result in a practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience for the owner, lessee, or occupant? Staff, the subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district and provides adequate space while allowing adequate separation from nearby residences.
Concur.
Two, granting the variance will result in material detriment or injury to other property or improvements in the neighborhood. Staff, no detriment and/or injury to other property or improvements is anticipated.
Concur.
Three, granting the variance will result in an inadequate supply of light or air to adjacent property, substantially increase traffic congestion, increase fire risk, or substantially diminish property values in the neighborhood. Staff, the subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district and provides adequate space while allowing adequate separation from nearby residences. No adverse effects are anticipated.
Concur.
Mr. Chairperson,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have it in there that, I am concerned about what type of building is going in there and how it might potentially diminish the property values in the neighborhood. If they got away with putting in a metal building or something that was totally out of theme for Prairie Creek. It'd be nice to know if they had talked to any of their neighbors about it.
I can notify, or I can mention that in the minutes, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Ms. Carey. Four, the request for a variance is not based exclusively on a desire of the owner, lessee, occupant, or applicant to make more money out of the property. Staff, the applicant has declared the intended use to be an accessory storage structure.
Concur.
Conditions to be met. One, the requested variance arises from a condition unique to the property in question, which is not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and which was not created by any action of the property owner or the applicant. Staff, the subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district and provides adequate space while allowing adequate separation from nearby residences.
Concur.
Two, strict application of the provisions of these zoning regulations would result in unnecessary hardship for the owner, lessee, or occupant of the land or structures. Staff, the intent of the accessory structure limitations is to assure that the size of the accessory structures does not overwhelm the single-family look and feel of the neighborhood. The subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space and separation from nearby residences, while below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur.
Three, granting the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. The intent of the accessory structure limitations is to assure that the size of the accessory structures does not overwhelm the single-family look and feel of the neighborhood. The subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space and separation from nearby residences, while below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur.
Concur.
Four, the requested variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. Staff, the intent of accessory structure limitations is to assure that the size of accessory structures does not overwhelm the single-family look and feel of the neighborhood. The subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space and separation from nearby residences, while below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur.
Five, the requested variance will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of these zoning regulations. Staff, the intent of accessory structure limitations is to assure that the size of accessory structures does not overwhelm the single-family look and feel of the neighborhood. The subject property exceeds the minimum lot area for the zoning district, provides adequate space and separation from nearby residences, while below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur. Thank you, Vance. All right. Sorry about that. Had to find my right page. Do we have a motion then to either modify and approve, disapprove, or to table the discussion? And Justin, would a motion need to incorporate what Gary said, or has that been handled by being in the minutes?
I think I can just probably put it in the minutes. I don't think there needs to be any kind of like modification on the approval or anything
We
like
can't
that.
technically control that.
Correct.
It's basically a recommendation.
Yeah, but I think it's nice that it's noted that we would like to see that typically going forward.
Yeah.
Good point, Vance.
Yeah.
And we hope you don't erect a 20 by 24 shack.
Right. I think it's for the record to say that, if for some reason this doesn't look particularly good, this group would have liked to have seen more.
Yeah, I know when I put a shed in at my house, I had to take it before the HOA to get it approved. I had to have drawings and
There's an
paint
architectural
samples.
Committee in there
Yeah.
usually on the HOA.
Yeah,
I wouldn't imagine it'd
So-
be different.
hopefully it's the same thing out of Prairie Creek. And it is mentioned in there several times in the staff comments, the intent of an accessory structure limits to assure that the size of the accessory structure does not overwhelm the single family look. So, yeah, I don't think we'd want a 35-foot building
Right.
back there. So,
From what I could see, this is the first one of its kind in this neighborhood. Maybe I missed it, but I can't see any others. So,
it's the first one in Prairie Creek.
but most of them probably don't have room to do something like this. I mean, this is a unique kind of a longer lot that allows it, but yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairperson, having considered the evidence at the hearing and determined that the findings of fact have found to exist that support all 5 conditions set out in subsection 11-106.b2 of the zoning regulations and KSA 12-759E, I, Gary Israel, move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting the variance for case number BZA-V23-0012 as requested.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second, do we have a second to that motion?
Second by Vance Garwood.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Eric Peterson, make a motion that we adjourn the board. No, don't we have? Oh, hey.
Resolution.
Closing
Golly.
remarks.
It's been a long time since I've forgotten that. Darn it. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. Closing remarks. A resolution will be prepared and made available to the applicant as soon as reasonably possible, but no later than 45 days from the date of this hearing. If anyone is aggrieved by this decision, a further appeal can be made to the district court to determine its reasonableness within 30 days after the resolution is signed and filed with the zoning administrator.
And I, Gary Israel, make a motion to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals and reconvene the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Gary. I, Eric Peterson, second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will reconvene the planning commission. I should have known I was out of line because Gary didn't jump in with that motion like he always does. He was waiting for me.
Gary's very good at helping us move the meeting along.
Yes, he is.
I appreciate that.
I do as well. All right, we'll move to agenda item number 6, member items. And if we could, maybe we'll said it earlier, but let's take a second before we get out of here. And Peter and Clint, each introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Peter Fox, been a resident for 23 years here in Andover. I worked at the Coleman Company, retired from there in 2009. I've worked a number of jobs trying to keep myself busy over the last few years. Universal Lubricants. I helped build a children's hospital up in Iowa City. If you watch the Iowa game, at the beginning of every second quarter, they turn and look at that.
Yeah.
We watched it. Yeah.
It's an amazing story. Really happy to be a part of that project. Did some work with my brother-in-law who bought a company down in Arkansas. I helped him turn that business around. And now I'm just, goofing off. So thank you for indulging me. I appreciate it, and I hope I can be of service.
Glad to have you here, and this is a good group to goof off with. So happy to have you. Clint?
Thank you.
I'm Clint Tyner. I've been an accountant all my life, third generation accountant. I have, I guess my first experience with Andover was in the early 80s when I was going to Wichita State. Met my first wife out on Harry and Andover Road, the Jaegers. And back when Sankey's farm was out there. And so been active in Andover for many years since then. Built my, last house here and moved to Texas for 10 years and came back, and where did I want to live? Andover. And so I always loved it here, always thought it had a great amount of potential. And my accounting background is with several developers and commercial and residential developers. And I also put through probably about 10 or $12 million worth of industrial revenue bonds through Park City, through the Park City development there for the commercial industrial park there. So I've got a little bit of experience, but like I said, I love Andover and I wanted to get back.
Really happy to have you with us.
Yeah.
Really happy. Thank you.
Thanks for
Welcome
coming on
both you
board,
guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
But
Wanted-
the two of you, it may seem like a lot at this time, but over the next few meetings, you'll get to learn a lot and how all this works. And I remember my first few meetings that I just tried to listen a lot, and not that you should just listen, but you'll get more used to it pretty quick.
And it would be advisable to come to subdivision committee meeting,
Sure.
because that's where we hammer out a lot of the issues and you get a real more informal setting to be able to do that.
Earlier this evening, I volunteered for that.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Yeah,
I
it'd be
would,
nice to have another member.
I think that's
Great.
where I can get the knowledge I need to
That'd be
be
great.
as productive as possible.
Justin probably mentioned, but myself and Gary and Marla are on it now. So you would join us. So that's great. So if one or two of us are gone, it makes the committee pretty small. So I'm glad to hear that you're on it.
Well, you haven't accepted me yet, so.
Well,
It's pretty straightforward. You're on.
Yeah.
You're now accepted, buddy. All right. Well,
I wanted to shout out to Justin, thank him for his
Yeah.
3+ years here.
Yeah.
This will be his last meeting in attendance for the Planning Commission as he moves on to a new career just down the road a few miles.
Thank you, Les. I will say it's been a pleasure working with all of you. I really do love working with the Planning Commission. Eric, you run a very efficient meeting. You guys ask very intelligent questions. Rarely do I think that, that's not, I want to say rarely, but I think staff, the relationship with staff and the Planning Commission subdivision committee members is really awesome. I think you guys definitely do your due diligence, do your research leading up to these things, which obviously makes it easier for us in terms of working with you. And it's been a real pleasure serving all of you, residents of Andover. Working with Les has been fantastic. It's really been a wonderful experience. So thank you all so much.
thank you too,
yeah,
Justin.
thank you very much.
Hate to see you go.
Where are you going again?
City of Wichita.
Okay then.
So where will you go to work at?
I will be working with, I'll be working with MAPD in their advanced plans division. So I'll be working on, they have multiple divisions. One is current plans, but I will be doing advanced plans, which, more so neighborhood, small area plans, that type of thing. So a little bit more specific, but it's an area that I'm really excited about. So it'll be a good change, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, Gary, give us a motion, would you?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I, Eric Peterson, second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're out. Thank you, everybody.